All right, guys. So in the previous lecture, we created this layout based on Photoshop to give us very clear image of how much size we want to give for each of those different sections of our website, right? So we know how much pixels we want to give for the header, how much pixels width and height for the menu, how much pixels width and height for each of those different sections. So now next job for us is to make the same layout inside Dreamweaver. Okay, so if I open up Dreamweaver, we already set up the project folder for our website. If you have not done it, if you're opening Dreamweaver for the first time, you need to go to the site menu and choose a new site. So in our case, we have already set it up. So when I go to my files folder, it will point out to the exact folder that I have, which is website inside D drive, and it will also show you the content that is inside that. So I have a index.html file, I have a style.css, which I can actually remove and I'll create it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to this folder location. So that is by exploring that folder here. I don't want to have this index.html and the CSS. I'm going to delete them because we're going to create it now. Okay. So now if I just refresh here, it will show there's just the layout Photoshop files and the layout JPG file. And now what I want to do is I want to create a new file here. So I'll go to either create new here, or I can go to file and choose new. So what I want is a HTML file, and we can give a title here. We'll call this as index. Keep in mind all your first files or your home page has to be named as index.html. Hit create, so that creates our index.html file, and it just has the title here as index. So what we want to do is we want to create the basic layout that we decided from Photoshop. So to start creating the layout, we need to first create something called a div tag. Now, a div tag is basically nothing but a container, or to put in simple words, a simple box that can have other contents inside, more organized way. So each of the boxes that we see here, let's say if I open up this layout, each of these boxes that you see here is basically one div tag. Okay, so this box is one div tag, this box is one div tag, and inside the menu we have one box for one div tag, another box for another div tag, another box for another menu item. So every single box that you see here is basically one div tag. Okay, so let's go ahead and start creating these div tags. To create a div tag, all we need to do is make sure that you're in the place that you want to insert it. Let's say in our case it is going to be between the body opening tag and the body closing tag, right? So that's where we will actually have all our content. So even if I select here, it's actually going to go to that same exact location. To insert a div tag, we can either go to insert menu, and there also you can find div, or I can also go to this insert window, and there you will find div. So either click here, or you can go to insert and choose this menu item. So the moment you do that, it actually creates a div tag, and that's it. So that's a little tricky for us. I'm going to delete that line that was just created. I'm going to go to the insert tab and click div here. So that opens up a little bit of extra options because we're not going to do everything with code. We're going to create everything more of a design style, right? So what we want to do is we want to give some names here. We're going to set some rules here, which will help us to create that entire shape. So the first box that we're going to create is the entire website. Okay, so starting from the header till the footer, the entire website, that is our big size box, right? So generally in web designs, it is called as a wrapper, it is called as container, so you can use any kind of name you like. So I'm going to call this as a big box because it's the biggest box of our website. So I'm going to call this as big box. Okay, so just to differentiate that name, I'm going to make the second B to be bigger in size. Now, I wrote this inside this class section, right? So what that means is that this is going to be a class name that we are giving for this div tag. Now you can either give class name or you can also give an ID name. Class name is basically defined with a little dot in the beginning, and ID is defined with a little hash symbol in the beginning. Now the difference between these two things is like ID basically takes up one specific page, and it cannot be used for other different sections of your website. But if you define it as a class, it can be repeatedly used in many different locations. So it's better to define it as class. So class big box. Now also we can change the place where we want to insert it. We can choose insert point. That is basically where we had the cursor point, which is inside the body section, which is perfectly fine for us. Now next thing that we need to do is we need to define CSS rule. Now what is a CSS? A CSS is called cascading style sheet, which is a separate file or separate set of codes, and these codes will decide how the HTML tag should function or how it should appear in a web browser. So div tag is nothing but just a container, but it does not have any information about what size it should have, what kind of margin it should have, what kind of background color it should have, and all those different properties, right? So we define a CSS rule to define or set all these properties for our div tag, right? So we're going to define our CSS rule for this particular div tag called big box. Hit the new CSS rule, and then as you can see, it shows this little dot. That means that it is basically a class, and we're going to define a CSS rule for this. Now we can define the CSS rule either inside the same HTML file, or we can define it in an external CSS file. Better to do it in an external file so that we have more control over the content, and it will be easier for us to navigate between the CSS and HTML. So what I'm going to do here is go down to this rule definition, and I'll go here to the options and choose new style sheet. Okay, now keep in mind this step you have to do only once for the first time when you are defining a CSS file for your HTML page. Now once you do it for the first time, it is automatically going to take this file from the next time, unless you want to create a new CSS file. Okay, so I'm going to choose a new style sheet file, and I'll hit OK here, and it's going to ask me where you want to save this CSS file and what name you want to give for that. So just like how we named the first HTML file as index.html, this first CSS file will also be named as style.css. Okay, now we give these definition names because our website or the websites or the web browsers will be able to understand these names much easier, so that they will be easily able to collect those information. And for another web developer who want to check your codes, it'll be easier for him to understand, okay, where is my CSS file? It has to be named as style.css. It's going to be saved in the same folder, that is our website folder. Hit save here. It's okay, just hit OK here. So now this window is going to be the place where we're going to set up all these CSS rules for the div tag that we are creating. Now keep in mind, if you have an older version of Dreamweaver, you can actually access this window anytime you want, even after creating the CSS rules. But with newer versions of Dreamweaver, you cannot access this window the second time. We have other options to make those changes to those values, but keep in mind, if you're comfortable with this layout, this window, then you need to make all kinds of changes that you want right in the beginning itself. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm not going to change any of these fonts. I'm going to go inside the background. I'm going to change the background color to red, just to see how or what is the entire space, or how much space the div tag is taking up. So I'm going to keep it at red color, and I'm going to go inside box, and this is where we define the size of the big box that we are creating. So I'm going to choose here for the width 960 pixels, and px is basically stands for pixels, and height is going to be 1000 pixels. If I don't give height value here, what will happen is it will just stay as a single line of box. So we're going to create it as 1000 pixels, and we can change it later if you want, or we can just delete it and let the inside content define how much height it wants to have. So we're going to leave it as it is, 960 pixels width and 1000 pixels height. And if you want to change, give a border or margin or whatever you want, you can also do that, but we're going to leave that as it is for now. Hit OK, and still nothing happened because we have not inserted the div tag yet. Hit OK once again, and now we have our div tag inserted inside the body section, and it has the width of 960 pixels. You can see that 950 is here, so that should be 960 pixels. And also we have the entire 1000 pixels to be taken here. So if I go from the split view to my design view, that will basically show me design view, that will basically show me the entire content here. Fine. So now once we create this div tag, you see this little content that it shows. If I go to my split view, you will also notice that we have the big box, that's the name, class name that we created, and we have some little content text in here, right? So starting from here, you see this opening div tag, and this is the closing div tag. So whatever you see inside this is going to be showing inside the box, right? So if I just delete this content, okay, so I just select the text and deleted it, you'll see that that content is being gone. So if I go down below this and I type some text here, right? So watch what happens. It does not show up here. And if I scroll down all the way, that content will show down here. So if you want this content to be inside the div tag, all you need to do is just select that, cut, and paste between these two sections. So when you paste it inside here, what is going to happen is the content will go inside. So this is common for any type of content, whether it is a text or it is a picture or it is another div tag or even div tag inside div tag, or whatever content you put inside this closed bracket and this open bracket, or this greater than symbol and this less than symbol, is going to be inside this div tag. Now keep in mind, for Dreamweaver codes, it does not care about the line space. So even if I press enter here as many times as I want, if I give 10 lines empty here, it is not going to make a change. It is equal to having the content like this. Okay, so this and this is the same. So if you press enter accidentally or give a space or something like that, it does not make a difference. But if you press enter here by typing something, let's say I type something here and I press enter here and I go here, and that is actually going to create different paragraphs. Understand? So keep that in mind. It's going to create paragraphs. If I press enter without doing anything, then probably it'll just create some little empty spaces, right? So you can see that this is basically an empty paragraph. There's no content inside, but it's a starting and the ending of a paragraph because I pressed enter here. Okay, so keep those things in mind. If you press enter in the code, no problem, all same. But if you press enter inside a div tag or inside your design view, it is going to create or generate codes inside our div tag or inside our HTML file. Okay, so this is something you need to keep in mind to make sure that everything works perfectly fine for you. And whatever change we do here for the code, it is also going to change here. So we created our first big box. So that is done. So next step we need to do is we need to create the header section, right? So the header section is going to be 960 pixels width and 150 pixels height. Now header is basically a HTML tag, so we should use a different name here. So let's go ahead and before that, let me just save my HTML file. So I'll go to File, choose Save. Be saved inside the same folder. I'm going to name this as index.html. Save that file. So we have index.html, and then we have style.css. Now let's just take a look at this style.css file. So if I click on that, it's actually going to show us down here. So style.css file basically has nothing but the style information or CSS rules that we created from that big window that we saw earlier, right? So I set the background color to be a certain color. We discussed about this code, hexadecimal code and stuff like that in the previous lecture. Also, we have height to be a certain 1000 pixels and the width to be 960 pixels. So whatever values that we gave in that window of CSS rule is going to be accessible here. Now, let's say we created a background color and maybe we're not happy with the background color. We want to change it. We can either manually change it here, or the easiest thing that we can do is go to CSS Designer. Okay, so CSS Designer is basically the place where you can make all kinds of changes to your CSS codes. So if I just pick this div tag and I go down here, it's basically this big box, and that big box has all these properties. So all the properties that you saw in that window is going to be available here. Now, if it is not showing all of these, sometimes it might just show whatever changes you have made. Just click on this little show set. Okay, so if this is ticked on, it is going to show only the values that you have changed. If you tick it off, it will show everything that is possible to be changed. So I'm going to tick this on, and it's going to show us just the width and height. We can change it manually here. So let's say if I want, I can also increase that. So that's going to make changes in the width. Let's just bring this back to 960 pixels. And we're going to change the background color here to something like maybe a light color, something like that. That's perfect. So that's it. So whatever change we make here, it is instantly going to reflect here in our design view. And if you go back to the CSS again, it will also change the numbers. Good. So next thing that we want to do is we also need to save these changes to be sure that whatever changes we are doing is being affected into the final file. Now, if you see a little star symbol in front of after any of these guys, so even for the HTML file or for the CSS, that means that file is not being saved. So the easiest thing that we can do is go to File and choose Save All, right? So that star is being removed. That means now we have saved all our files. Good. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to create the header section here. So I'll go back to my source code, and we have to be inside the big box. So make sure that you're inside the big box. And I will go to Insert, and we will insert another div tag. Okay, so this div tag is going to have a class name of top box, or let's say header box. Okay, if you just write header, it will tell you that there's already a HTML tag with the same name. So do you want to use the same, or you want to use something else? So I'm going to choose header box, and I will click on new CSS rule. And this time, remember last time what we had was we had an option to create a new CSS style sheet, but this time we can choose the existing CSS style that we have created. So I'll choose style.css. So the new CSS that we're going to create is also going to be put inside the same style.css file that we have created earlier. Click OK, and it shows up all these options here. We'll talk about this font and stuff later. Let's just give a background color first. Red again, maybe green. Yeah. And I need to go to the box here, and I'll give a width of 960 pixels, but the height is going to be changed. I think it is 150 pixels height. Nothing else to be changed except one little thing here called float. Okay, now this float is basically going to decide how each of the boxes are going to be laid inside the CSS. Okay, so let me open up Photoshop for you to just to illustrate here. So let me just take a new file here, maybe A4, maybe not A4, something like that. Okay, fine. So imagine that this big white space that we have is our container, right? So our big box. So inside the big box, we want to put lots of other stuff. So let's say I might have one box here. I might have one box here. I might have one box here, like so. So what CSS does, or what Dreamweaver does, is if I choose the float to be left, okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to put the first box in the top left corner, and the second box is going to be just placed after that, okay, and the third is going to be placed just after that, and the fourth will be placed after that, and so on and so forth until it reaches the end here. Okay, so the moment it reaches the end, it is going to go to the next line. Okay, so this is basically how Dreamweaver will add these different boxes that we're creating inside it. So if the first box that we're creating, okay, so if the first box that we're creating is big enough to fit the entire length, that's well and good. So the second box will basically go underneath down here. Okay, now if we have let's say the third box to be like this, long enough, okay, and then the fourth box is let's say filling up this entire space. Control J to make the duplicate, forgetting the keyboard shortcuts. Control J, okay. And let's say it's going to be small, but it's going to be wide to fill up this entire space. So let's say if the next box is filled up till this end, right? So the next object that I'm going to create is not going to be here. It is not going to be here. It is actually going to be placed down here, okay, because this place will become empty and this place will become empty because of this little big area that this box is covering up. Okay, so I'm going to select all these guys just to give you a little border so that you will know what we are talking about. Where do we have border, 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 white? Yeah, maybe not that thick. Good. So if the first one is covering up till the end, it's going to go to the next. And if it is, if that again the second line is also reached, then it's going to go to the next line. And if the previous line has got any content that is till the bottom here, the next one is also going to be placed after that, not here, not here. Understand this, okay? And this understanding is really, really important if you really want to create a good design. Okay, so keep in mind, inside the big div tag, all the elements that you're going to create, you're going to give a float of left. Okay, so anything that you create is going to float left. So the first one is going to be in the left side, the second one is going to be next to that, and the third one is going to be next to that. And when it reaches the end, it's going to go to the next line, again starting from left side and going on till the end. Okay, hit OK now and hit OK once again, and you can see that we have created the header section up here. So if I go back to the design view, you can see we have the full big box and then we have the header section filled up. So next thing that we want to do is we want to create the next bar, which is very good, which is the menu bar, right? So if I go back to my image here, so that menu bar is going to be 960 pixels and then 50 pixels. Okay, so the easiest thing to do here is just go down here and make sure that you're outside the headed box, right? And if you want, you can actually press an enter to go to the next line. And then here we are inside the big box and outside the header box, right? So we want to insert the next div tag, so that is going to be called as menu box. Menu box. Again, new CSS rule, same style.css file, hit OK. And background color will give something like that. Box, we will call this as 960 pixels width, and height is going to be 50 pixels, and float left. Hit OK and hit OK once again. There you go. Right? So now inside the menu box, we need to create different menu items. Right? So this menu items are going to be placed inside this, so we need to delete this content. So if you have this text, what will happen is the box that you create will come after this text. So we need to actually delete this text, and we need to create it inside the box. Again, very important. So if you're not clear, just go to the code here, press enter here to give some space so that you know that you're actually creating the menu boxes inside the menu items inside the menu box. Okay, so the menu box is going to have a size of 240 pixels and 50 pixels. Okay, so let's go to create a new one here. Go to insert div tag once again. Call this as menu 1. MENU 1. Yeah, I think that should be fine, but better to avoid numbers here. I think it should work fine. Yeah. Go to new CSS rule. Now keep in mind, don't use just numbers, okay? That might give you issues. But menu 1, I think it should be fine. If it has issues, then we will change it later. So again, it's going to be saved inside the same CSS style.css. Hit OK. And go to background. We'll give a background color of blue, which will be contrasting to the color that we already had. Go to box, and we're going to give a width of 240 pixels and height of 50 pixels. Now keep in mind, we said that we want to have a little margin, right? So if you want to give a margin, you need to basically reduce that margin thickness from the width and height. This is really important, and a little calculation that you have to do. So I want to give a margin of 5 pixels, right? So 5 pixels for top, 5 pixels for right, 5 pixels for bottom, 5 pixels for the left. Okay, so that means I need to remove 5 pixels from the top here and 5 pixels from the bottom. So from width, instead of 240, it has to be 230 pixels, because 5 pixels out from the right, 5 pixels out from the left. And for the height, I need to make it 40 instead of 50. Okay, and float is going to be left. That is fine. So let's hit apply here and OK. I think that's fine. Let's check it out. Hit OK here. Yep, that's exactly what we wanted. 5 pixels gap here, 5 pixels gap there, 5 pixels gap here. And the margin has the color that is taken from the big menu box that we created. That is perfectly fine. So next thing that we want to do is we want to create the same thing for the other one. So the easiest way to do that is I could basically copy and paste this, or you can actually create this every time. That's up to you. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. Let me show you this method. Copy and go back, paste. One more time. I'll have to go back here, paste, and go back here and paste. Now notice what I'm doing here. I have created 4 different div tags, but with the same class name. And watch what happens. It automatically brings all those 4 content. Yes? And now it all looks fine. So if I just go back to my style.css, you will see that there's just one menu CSS, but we have 4 different content here. Okay, So that is perfectly fine for us. But one little thing that you'll notice is the space here is a little bit too much, but that's fine because we have 5 pixels from this one and 5 pixels from that one. So this becomes 10 pixels. So if you want to adjust that, you need to calculate exactly how much space you want to give between them, and then you can do that as well. Okay, so that is done. Let's just check out how this looks in the entire design section. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's just go ahead and save all just to make sure that everything is being saved so far. And then we need to create our next div tag, which is, I think, our content section. So to do that, all we're going to do is we need to basically come out of our menu box. Okay, so menu is starting from there and then it's ending here. So let's go outside the menu, then go down. And here we're going to create the next div tag, which is going to be the big content or big area for the content. So that content is going to be 960 by 700 pixels. So again, the same step, and basically you need to repeat the same step to create all these other stuff. So this is going to be called as content box. New CSS rule, hit OK. And I'm not going to give a background color here because I'm just going to use the same color from the container that I have. And I need to go to box, give 960 pixels as the width, and height is going to be 700 pixels. Float left, this is really important, and everything else can be the same. Hit OK, hit OK. So that basically creates the big container. And you will actually see the end of that big container. So inside that, I'm going to delete this text. I'm going to create 2 other div tags. Okay, so one is this one and one is this one. So content 1 and content 2. So let's go ahead and make sure that we are inside the container content box, and I'll insert the next div tag. This is going to be called as content content box, and we can call the other one as advertisement or ads box, or I can say content 1 box, or whatever you like. So let's hit new CSS rule, and everything else is going to be the same, and we will go to box here. Width is going to be 600, I guess, and height is going to be 700. So let's check. Yeah, 600 by 700, and this is also going to have a margin here. So let's say border of 5 pixels. Float is going to be left, and choose margin of 5 pixels. Okay, hit OK here, and I think that's it. Yes. Uh-oh, something went wrong. Did I create 2? The second one also I have named it as content box, did I? So the second one has to be called as content 1 box. Okay, so watch what happens. I have this problem, that is because there's 2 CSS having the same name with different values. So I'm just changing the name here, and I'm going back to the source code, and I'm changing the name here. So content 1 box. So now you can see that the first one automatically fixed, and the second one also came here. Now, let me show you. I'm supposed to create a background color, but I forgot to do that. So let me show you that here. Okay, so once you have created the CSS, how do we modify it? Okay, so to change any of these values, we can actually go back to the CSS designer section here, and if I just turn on this show set, it is going to show us just the content that we have changed, like the width, height, and the margin. So if I turn this off, it's actually going to show us a little extra content information. So there you will find text color, text shadow color. Let's find out the background color. There you go. So background color, I'm going to give something like that. Or how about some dark yellow? Okay, So once that is done, you can see that that gets updated here. Easy. So if I go back to my design view, I have got my header, I have got my menu items, and I have my content box. Okay, so if I want to create more content inside this, again, I can just simply delete this text and create more div tags depending on how much space you want and what kind of content you want to have. So maybe you can just have one div tag here for some text content, and it can also have a picture inside. So if you have a picture and text, so make one div tag here for this entire size, and then make another div tag inside here for just the picture, and make one more div tag for just the text. So keep in mind, div tag is going to be basically used for creating any kind of content inside your HTML page. So the next one is the next div tag that we're going to have here. So again, let's just go back to the split view, and this is going to be inside the content box, but outside this content one box. So let's go ahead, go down here, and go to insert menu, another div tag. You can even copy this and paste it and change the content name. That's up to you. So any way you like. So let me just do that. Instead of just going here every time, I'm going to show you how to do this same step using just the code, right? So let's just go back, paste here. So this is going to be the second one, and the second one is going to be content 2 box. Let's go click here, nothing will happen. Okay, and if I go to my CSS styles, and I should be able to find content 1 box, all I'm going to do is copy this, okay, and paste, and instead of 1, we're going to call this as content 2 box. Now what will happen is if I do this, it's not going to have any change here again. It just created the second one and pushed it down. That is because we don't have enough space there, right? So all I have to do is just reduce the size of this. That is the width from 600 to, let me check how much that is, 360 pixels. So 360 pixels. So watch what happens. It became smaller, but it did not go there. Why? Maybe the margin is too thick. Let me just make that 2. Still, it's not going up. Strange. Maybe I don't want to have any margin, so let's just delete the margin here. Float left height is going to be 700. That is fine. Okay, it went. It's still down. It's supposed to be coming down here. Let me check where it is being placed here. Let me also try to save as. It's inside the content box. Yeah, content 2 box. Content 2 box. Float left. Height is going to be 700. Background color. Let me change the background color to something else maybe. CSS designer. Go down all the way here just to differentiate them. Okay. Yeah, that is correct. But let me try to make it even smaller. 360. So let's try 300 only. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So it went up. So maybe the size was the problem. So let's try to give 350. Yeah, 350 itself is covering up. So this calculation is wrong. So it's not 360. It has to be less than that. So let's try 340. Yeah, that looks good. And I'll give the margin. I can actually copy this margin from here and paste it over. Copy, paste. Go to File, Save, and check that out. Yeah, that margin is fine. That looks perfectly good. But I think the height is not exactly the same for the content here. So if I say content box, it should be more 10 units higher. So yeah, that went a little bit down. So now the last section is our footer section. So let's just create the footer also. go down all the way outside the content box, but inside the big box. Okay, so that is down here. Let's create the footer, insert, div tag, footer box, new CSS rule. Same exact everything, except we'll give a background color. And width is going to be 960 pixels, but height is going to be how much? I don't know, 100 pixels. Float left, hit OK. OK once again, and there you go. That's our footer. So if I go to File, Save All, go to Design, and there you go. So that's our website design. So we have basically created our layout in Dreamweaver. Now to preview this on a web browser, you can go all the way down here to this corner, click on Preview button, and you can choose any of your website. For our purposes, we're going to use Google Chrome, so make sure that you have Google Chrome installed. Click on it once again, and that's going to open up the index file, and it actually shows you where it is opening it from. And there you go. So that's our website. So based on the layout that we have designed, now we need to create the inside content for each of those boxes. Now, if you want to bring this right to the middle, you can actually do a little bit of change to this big box. To make sure that we put this exactly in the middle, we need to go to margin section, and for both the left margin, we'll choose auto, and for the right margin, we will choose auto. So what it'll do is it'll try to keep the entire website exactly in the middle, right? So to do that, to preview it, just go to File, Save All, and go here and choose Google Chrome. There you go. So now you can see that it actually stays right in the middle instead of just going to the left end. And even if you adjust the web browser, you can see that actually I can just pull this over, and you'll see that no matter how big or small I adjust it, it is always going to have the same exact space between left side and the right side. Okay, so that ends the lecture.